In order for our layout to display properly, we need to include some necessary CSS and JavaScript files. Although we don't have any JavaScript written at the moment, we want to include a few essential libraries like jQuery for later. If I open up our HTML folder again, you can see there is a folder for CSS files, and if we click inside of it, we'll find 4 of them. 3 of them are necessary for the general theming, and then the 4th one is just called custom, which is where we'll add any miscellaneous styles to make our own tweaks. If we switch back over to Visual Studio, let's expand the content directory in our solution. There are a few files to start with in here, but I'm just going to delete all of them so we can start fresh. After those are gone, let's open up our HTML directory again and just click and drag all 4 of these files into Visual Studio. We also need to repeat this same process for our font files. Let's expand our fonts folder in Visual Studio and just delete everything in this directory as well. Once that's empty, we can head back over to our file folder and navigate to our fonts. Go ahead and just drag all of these files into the matching folder in Visual Studio again, and then we'll be all set for that. All of the JavaScript files we need are already included with this starter template, so the next thing we want to do is create a bundle for those 4 CSS files. Bundling is a nice feature that will combine all of our CSS files into one and minify it for performance benefits. This will only happen when we go to deploy our application, so it will be easy to debug our resources in the browser while we're still developing. So under our app start folder, let's click on bundleconfig.cs to open that up. There's a few bundles in here already, some of which we'll use, but I want to add a new one at the bottom. I'm just going to paste in a little one-line snippet here so that we can talk about what these string patterns mean. We're first creating a new style bundle, which will be located at this CSS URL starting from the root of our application. We then want to include an entire directory in that bundle, which in the case of our solution is called content. We only want to include files in that directory with a CSS extension, so we use this star wildcard pattern to make sure that other files don't get pulled in accidentally. With that in place, let's move over to our layout file. Inside of here, we want to delete all of the style and script references brought in from the static HTML, so I'll get rid of those quick. We then want to pull in 3 bundles: the style bundle we just created, and then a script bundle for jQuery and jQuery validate, both of which we'll use later. This is really simple to do, so I'm just going to paste in a small snippet here for simplicity. You can see we're referencing the CSS bundle we created, as well as the 2 jQuery related bundles that we'll be working with later. So that's all set, and this should pull in all of the CSS and JavaScript files needed for our application. One other thing I want to mention concerning pulling resources into your layout is that the default MVC template actually includes a layout section just for scripts. So if we go down to the bottom of our layout, right before the closing body tag, we could add something like @render_section and then pass in the string scripts, and we can set required to false. This will add a placeholder in our layout that individual views can optionally override to add their own scripts. This can be really useful if you want to include a script on just one page and not across the whole application like we're doing here. We don't need this for our app right now, so I'm just going to delete it, but I just want you to keep this in mind as a good use for layout sections and script implementations. Let's run our application and make sure all of our styles are working correctly. After our site loads, it should look almost identical to the demo projects that I showed you before. The starter template appearance provided by Visual Studio should be completely gone. If we right-click inside of Chrome and choose the Inspect option, we can open up our Dev Tools, and then let's click over to the Sources tab. Inside of here, you can see what CSS and script files were included if we expand the folders on the left here. You'll notice that all 4 of our CSS files were included separately, even though in our app we said to include them as a bundle. So why do we see 4 instead of 1 minified combined file? Well, remember, the bundling only applies when you go to publish the app from Visual Studio, not while you're running locally, so for now this is actually behaving just like we want. So now we have our design running inside of an MVC application, but obviously there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. All of this data is just static HTML, and the nav links over on the left don't even work yet. So in the next lesson, let's begin to explore how Web Forms and MVC each handle creating more dynamic elements such as forms and nav links.